The cold Christmas storm bringing heavy snow, strong winds, and brutal temperatures. New England's deep freeze seeing its coldest Christmas Eve high temps since 1975. New Jersey had its coldest day Friday in nearly 4 years. Central Park's high just 15 degrees. And this morning, Buffalo still reeling from a historic blizzard.
It is devastating. It is going to a war zone.
Overnight, Western New York's death toll climbing. Nationwide, now nearly 50 deaths blamed on the past week's winter weather.
Absolutely devastating. If you traveled through an airport or you know anyone who tried to travel on a plane, it was probably a nightmare. For them, a lot of people just trying to visit their loved ones over the holidays have been left in a bind. Look at this headline from Reuters. Travel insanity. US passengers stranded by winter storm. 2,500 flights canceled. Furthermore, the unhoused are again at the brunt of this extreme weather. US shelters saw an influx of homeless seeking help amid life-threatening winter. Fears about safety of unsheltered people raised as freezing blast of weather sweeps Great Plains and Great Lakes regions. It's just another reminder about the brutal power of Mother Nature, what the consequences of climate change and extreme weather will be. And it's also a reminder that storms like this are not just a problem for people who are traveling, who have the luxury of taking a plane to visit their loved ones. It's a huge problem for people who are living on the streets, who freeze to death when we experience these weather conditions. So this headline is very interesting from the New York Times. Why can a warming climate increase snowfall? One of those questions you have to ask when you have all of these people questioning whether or not climate change is a real phenomenon. So reporting from the New York Times again. Overall, winter temperatures are warming and the length of the winter season is shortening. Warmer temperatures mean that more of that precipitation will fall as rain rather than snow, according to Sean Burkle, climatologist for the state of Maine. But some places could still see more snowfall than before when rising temperatures are still below the freezing point. Global climate change unfolds a story of extremes. Historically wet areas are likely to experience increased precipitation, while historically dry areas may see more drought, even as higher evaporation rates dry out the soil. So it's really a story of extremes. That's why the main problem with climate change is that we have coastal areas that will experience more flooding, not only because of rising sea levels, but because of the increased severity of storms. And we know that these will disproportionately affect communities that don't have the resources to prepare themselves to weather these storms, have insurance, or build new homes. I want to watch this last video we want to show you regarding the winter storms, because this is kind of a feel-good story. Let's watch.
But Christmas in Buffalo did come with some unexpected holiday hope. Alex and Andrea Campagna say on Friday a bus full of Korean tourists heading for Niagara Falls got stuck outside their Buffalo area home.
So I said, come on in, everybody, because you're going to be here for a while.
Without hesitating, the couple welcomed 10 strangers in for 2 nights, sharing homemade Korean food and the Bills game with new friends.
That's so nice. Really lovely story. I don't know why you'd want to visit Buffalo of all of the places. No shade to Buffalo. Been to Buffalo, great place. It's just that there are other places that aren't as cold and maybe are more interesting. Perhaps they were seeing Niagara Falls, not really sure there. But the other thing that strikes me about this story is, like, if this was an unhoused person who didn't have access to a shower for a few days, or someone that you had seen in the streets before, would you be as willing to let them in just because of how they look? And why is that? I think that's an important thing to interrogate, because there are people who are stranded on the streets all of the time. But during the holidays, we love a story like this. But you know, the class consciousness in me tells me that there's some troubling dynamics here as well. Rayyvana?
Yeah, I hate to bring it down after that feel-good story, but I do want to highlight that there was people are dying in the storm. The death tolls continue to rise, and there was a 22-year-old young woman who was driving in the storm, and her car got stuck, got buried in, and she waited in there for hours and hours. But first responders couldn't reach her because the roads are so covered in snow and ice that she died in her car of carbon monoxide poisoning. And she's, by far not the only person who's experienced this. And the Buffalo mayor came out and made a statement about looting happening during the storm, which I think should be at the bottom of your list of priorities right now, when you need to be dedicating all of your resources to helping these people who are being impacted by the storm, as opposed to, trying to focus attention on people who are, maybe stealing some items from stores. Who cares? People are dying in your city, and you need to make it your priority to rescue people who are stuck in the snowstorm, and to help people who are stuck in their houses, have access to water, and make sure that their electricity stays on, and things of that nature, and not diverting attention to, a couple people breaking into stores and stealing TVs or whatever the hell they're stealing. That's not what's important right now.
But Rayyvana, who will think of the corporations? Oh my goodness, it's crazy. I mean, they have insurance. They're not going to even be fronting the cost of the lost goods that were stolen. Also, why are people risking their lives to go out during a dangerous storm where homes were literally encapsulated in ice in Buffalo? They're going to go out and drive to go to the stores to loot. Why? Because they have basic needs that are not being met. They're either stealing to sell things, or they're stealing things that they really need. How often do we see pictures of the NYPD repossessing things that they say were stolen, and it's baby formula? It's like people are struggling to meet their most basic needs, and you're concerned for the corporations having a loss that is such a small fraction of their total revenue that it's like a drop in the ocean. It's just absurd that this is what our media focuses on. Well, what will we do with all of the looters when the real violence is that we have more than enough resources and people are being exploited? They're not paid for the labor that they do. We've seen the charts from the Economic Policy Institute of what revenue looks like over time for corporations and what wages are being paid, what proportion of their revenue is going towards labor. It shrank steadily since the 70s. It's such a small fraction that it is so glaringly obvious that workers are not paid for the value of their labor, and then they are deprived of basic necessities. It's not hard to allocate public funding to pay for housing, especially when you consider we have 552,000 homeless people and about 16 million vacant units in the United States. It's an allocation problem, and it's intentionally ignored, and people are literally freezing to death. So yeah, sorry to bring the feel-good story down, but I think, Rayyvana and I have a tendency, to be real about this stuff. That's so Raven of you. I needed to get that in there.
It's a good line. I'm definitely going to use it.
We're going to do compile all of Rayyvana's predictions politically and just have a segment that's so Raven, I think.
I like it. I love it. With two Y's, of course.